Joshua Reeves. I am the director of University Theater, and tonight is our third Strictly Speaking. Tonight we've got Kara Harmon, a costume designer here up in New York, and Kara's joining us via Zoom. Kara, how you doing?
I'm good. Hi, everyone.
So, Kara, can we? I'd like to start off by just asking you, what is a costume designer? What does that mean to you?
Sure. So a costume designer is someone who is part of a team, part of a collaborative team, looking to tell the story of an actor or performer. It could be in a play, it could be in a musical, it could be a film or TV. And essentially my job is to work with the creative team, director, other designers, as well as the actor to come together and tell the story.
Yeah, see, told you, we're learning. Here I was muted. So can you tell us what a typical day is for a costume designer? I understand that, different parts of the process mean different types of days, whether you're in a technical rehearsal or a fitting, but can you kind of take us through what the process is? What do you do? What is the actual things you do?
Sure. I would say that I have maybe 4 types of days. I have days where I'm in the process of actually sketching, painting the show, doing research online or in books, and creating collages, sort of the foundational work. The other types of days are days in the costume shop, fitting actors, meeting with different artisans in the shop to talk about the builds, things that we're gonna shop for the show, make, crafts. The third type of day might be a day out in the garment district looking for materials, going to different fabric stores, trim stores, notions, meeting with different vendors who specialize in certain things like making custom leather belts or making shoes. And then I would say the fourth type of day is being in technical rehearsals, dress rehearsals, and previews. So that's when we're mainly in the theater for anywhere from 10 to 16 hours a day. And we're working as a group to get the show on its feet.
So talk to me a bit about, for those of you who may not know how costume designers work, it's not just about picking out clothing. It's not just about drawing. You say you were in the costume shop. So how much would you say your job is the actual creation of, or do you have a hand in the actual making of the costumes? Or is it more of you're handing off to shops to build these things for you?
I would say that it all depends on the project. Sometimes if it's a smaller scale production, you will be crafting and making your own things. Other times it's about facilitating your designs into the shop and having the ability to talk about how things are made, what your vision is, and even at times creating your own samples as an example to have a deeper conversation with a draper or a craftsperson. So, it all depends. There have certainly been shows where I've done it all myself, and there have been other situations where I've sort of provided the tools and the ideas and the sketches and the paperwork and all of those pieces to collaborate with a full costume shop, and they, build everything from top to bottom.
Awesome, great. So, we hear about what you do now, but where did you get your start? How did you, what pulled you into costume design or into theater or the arts? How did you get started?
I guess my career in the arts started when I was younger. I think like many people in the arts, it starts as a performer. Um, and so I guess when I was in the 6th grade, I was maybe in my first production. Um, I was in The Little Mermaid as Flotsam or Jetsam. I'm not sure which one it was, but it was a terrible costume. It was a wolf mask painted green with a green leotard. So that might have been the moment when I realized that I could do better. But growing up in high school, we didn't really have much of a theater department. So each actor was responsible for clothing themselves. And I had an interest in art. I had an interest in fashion and theater. So I guess as I grew, I sort of melded all of those things and found my way. But as a high school student, it was really fun because we could have as many costume changes as we wanted, as long as we procured the clothes. So when I was looking at colleges, I went to Ithaca College for my undergrad, and it was suggested to me, well, if you like fashion, if you like theater, and you're artistic, maybe you'd like to be a costume designer. And I really didn't know what that was. I'd seen a few shows. I'd seen, maybe 2 Broadway shows, but I didn't really have the instruction or education about design and about occupations in theater. So I was 18 years old. I said, great, sign me up. And it just kind of took off from there.
And what would you, your first real, like, where do you feel like you got your break? Like you're like, I've arrived in some way, whatever that definition means, but like, when do you feel like you got that first design that you're like, yes, this is what I love to do. This is what I want to do?
I think for me, it actually came pretty early, and it was in undergrad, and I was assigned Seussical the Musical as my production. And I think the reason that it sticks out to me is that it's the type of show where you can really sort of stretch and bend the rules. And it enabled me to flex some creative muscles and actually, make things with my hands and create and play in a way that can be hard to do on paper when you're in the classroom. So I think it just gave me the confidence to realize that I could take things from the page to the stage and, just sort of follow my vision.
Awesome. Yeah. I love Seussical. I've been trying to talk my colleagues into doing it for a while because I love it so much. So, and everyone just remember, the Q&A is there. So please jump in, ask questions, anything and everything, just go right ahead. I heard you use the term draper before. Can you tell us what a draper is? I know that's not particularly who you are, but it's someone you work with.
Sure.
So what does a draper do?
So I guess I could maybe give you an overview of what a costume shop consists of in terms of its staff. So a draper is someone who quite literally physically drapes cloth onto the form. They create patterns. They construct the garments. They often have an assistant who's called their first hand, who may finesse some of the work that they've done and also assist you in fitting the custom garments onto the actor. Other players in the costume shop might include a crafts or millinery person. That person can do anything from, making a necklace magnetic to creating some sort of fantastical crown. So anything that involves craft work that's not strictly sewing kind of falls into their department. And then, of course, the costume assistant, who is sort of the conduit between the designer and the rest of the costume shop, helping to convey the designer's wishes and vision when they can't be there, and also supporting throughout the process to make sure, I think, that the design sort of holds true to itself. The person who can continue to ask the questions and say, well, remember when we did this? You know, are you sure that that's what you want? Is this true to, you know, what the actor said? Just sort of being your lieutenant.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That's great. David Jones asks, you were speaking about research as well, is one of your typical day, or one of the typical days. How often do you have to set aside historically accurate costumes in deference to the public's incorrect expectations? If so, is that sometimes frustrating?
So I think what David is asking is if the public has one idea of what something is, but it might be false, how do I deliver a costume design that's historically accurate, that may not please what the public's assumption is? Is that right?
I think so. David, I think that's DJ, that's what you're asking. So yeah, and if not, let's go ahead and answer that question, because that's a great question too.
I think it's hard. I think there's sort of two versions of that maybe. So one version could be, let's say you're doing Beauty and the Beast, and everyone has this idea in their head, oh, well, Belle wears a yellow gown and it has to be a yellow gown. But maybe for us in our production, we don't want a yellow gown. So we, as a team, we're sort of breaking that rule. And I think what can help to center that is to just remember sort of what the mission of your production is and the core of it, because that's always going to be your roadmap to guide you back to the decisions. And ultimately, the production will be strong. You don't have to, justify that choice to anyone, because you've done the work, you've done the research, you've made the choices together. Honestly, if they don't like your choice, too bad. Like when it comes to things that are often set in a certain way, like this yellow gown. I find it really interesting with historical research, which I think is the sort of second part of this question, where I'm trying to think of a good example, but I personally love digging deep into historical research and the details and trying to bring truth and honesty to what something was. So I guess to answer that is I don't know if I should say this, but I'm not there to please the audience. I'm there to tell the truth of the story. So that's what I aim to do. And from the start, I always collect all of my research. I make it available digitally. So at the first rehearsal for the meet and greet, I can say, hi, everyone, like present the designs and say, please reach out to me, go to this source, and you'll see where all of this information was derived from. The facts, the dramaturgical work, the historical research, the color inspiration, it can all be traced back. So you can always use that as your tool.
And do you feel the actors appreciate that, that amount of research that you present to them, not just here's your costume, but here's the work?
Absolutely. And something that I've started to do is to create a little bit of a lookbook, which is essentially each character's look or costume with the associated research and inspiration, as well as my sketch. So that I can very clearly sort of pull the vision back, show the lookbook to the actor, to the director, whoever I need to communicate with, because I think it's important to always come back to that original source material, not only for yourself, like for yourself to say, oh yeah, like this is what I was thinking when I designed this 6 months ago. But for an actor who's coming into the process on their first day, they may have done some preparation, but they've never seen any of the visuals. So it could be 9 a.m. on the first day of rehearsal, and I say, hi, I'm Karen. I'm here to do a fitting with you for your costume. And they're like, oh my gosh, all I've done is read the script. So I'm giving them a look into my process, sort of a Cliff Notes version from the start, which I do think is really helpful.
Right, and I asked that because Amelia asks, when you create a costume, do you often craft the costume with the individual actor in mind, or mainly the character they're playing?
That's a really good question. When a show is cast, it sometimes works in tandem with the deadlines for design. So when it does, it's very excellent because I immediately stalk that person online. I find their headshot, I find their Facebook profile, whatever it is, so that I can incorporate them into the design, because it's not just a cut and paste where I design clothes and I stick it on whomever. I think the most successful designs are developed by embracing a person, and that, they're not just a canvas, they're a three-dimensional human being. I've even really gone as far as to, if an actor has a YouTube channel or has audition tapes online, I watch them because I want to have some information as to why that person was cast. And it does help me to see all sorts of things about them and how I can sort of incorporate them as a human being into my designs.
I think that's great. I mean, and that to me hits right with what you what's on the first page of your webpage. Let's tell stories together. So I do appreciate the fact that it's not just the design team and the director, but the actors are also part of that collaborative art form. Clara asks, do you have a certain type of costume that you most enjoy working on? What kind of historical period costumes are your favorite?
Oh, I don't know how to answer this, Clara. I guess I'll answer it in two ways. I really enjoy working in the 1940s and 50s. I think there's a very wide range of what the clothes can tell us in terms of mood and tone and feeling. They can, take us to a place that's not too far away from our own. And then the second part is I love working on costumes that transform and that start out as one thing and become another thing, which in some cases I have done in the 1940s with costumes that transform, but it's rare.
And Lydia asks, what is your favorite part of the design process? So we know you like the 1940s and 50s, but what process really keeps you going?
I really love the first time I get to talk with the costume shop about how we're going to take everything from paper into the next steps. And sometimes that's a muslin mock-up of things, which is the fabric that the draper uses to create the first version of a costume. Sometimes that's talking with the craftsperson about how we're going to mock something up. Again, we go back to the crown or a necklace, how things are going to function. Because I think what's so fun about this business is everywhere you work, you're meeting different people who have this whole pocket full of experiences. and they are ready to share. They want to tell you about things that have worked before, maybe things that haven't. We're all educating each other in this really cool way. So I'm always excited to go in on that day and say, okay, here's what I think it is, but I would love to hear what you think it is, because together we're going to make like the most awesome thing ever.
And so thank you very much. And when you do work, because you've worked across the country in different places, we have an attendee asking, do you often work with the same people on different productions, or are you constantly working with different people on different teams?
It's a mix, but more often than not, it might be that it's the same director and a few people that I know. And then sometimes it's a new theater, it's a new director, everyone's new to me. But I do think that, how do I put this? It can be tricky. Imagine like you get to work with your best friends all the time and you're like, this is great. I can read your mind, you can read my mind, like we can go out to dinner, a wonderful experience. But it doesn't provide opportunities to get a new face into the room and to hear a new perspective. So at some point you sort of have to mix that up a little bit and vary who you work with, which it can be hard, but it's also very rewarding. So I think you'll find that you may find your group, which is great. And you have this sort of shorthand with a group of people. But then it's also very wonderful to just get out there and have a completely new team and explore that option.
And I often find that even when I am meeting new people, somebody in that room knows somebody else that we know. I find that it's such a small world. Even looking at your resume, I kept seeing names that kept popping up as other designers saying, I know that person, I know her, I know him. So it's such a small world. I love part of that part of what we do in theater. And so speaking about theater, another anonymous attendee is asked, do you just make costumes for theater, or do you make custom pieces for clients that are not involved in theater?
Oh. I work in theater and film. I don't think I've made any custom pieces for anyone. I would say I've certainly consulted people or sort of shepherded them in the right direction in terms of someone who can meet their needs. But if you're asking if I can make your Halloween costume, the answer is probably
I was about
no.
to say, maybe it's coming up. Maybe that's what it is. So you mentioned film, and I've seen you've worked in opera, you've done film, you've done some magazine stylist work. I want to ask you a bit about film and television. You've worked on these 3 shows, Boardwalk Empire, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and Daredevil. Do you find it different working? I'm sorry, I lost you. Do you find it different working in film versus theater? And if so, what's the pros, the cons, the benefits, the challenges? What do you think?
They are different in that they have a really different timeline. You can work on a TV show anywhere from 8 to 10 months, shooting multiple episodes, shooting episodes while you're preparing for the next episode. The hours can be a little wacky. And it's just sort of like you're constantly on this little hamster wheel chasing the next thing. I think in theater, we give ourselves a little bit more time to plan, but there is an elasticity to the way that we need to think in terms of this is our long-term plan, knowing that things might change in tech, but we can sort of move forward, having presented ideas with our process. And, you know, usually we can like, you know, roll with the punches, but there aren't too many crazy things that happen. Like in TV, you might get to work in the morning, you get casting for a new person who's going to be on camera in the afternoon. And it's like, okay, here's 3 measurements from this guy, and he's called man number 2 at the bar. Here's a little picture of his face that's this big. Go out shopping, find clothes for him. We're going to have a fitting for him at noon.
Wow.
So it certainly exercises some different skills. And I think in that regard, it's not always for everybody. I know that my experience working in TV has sort of pushed me outside of my comfort zone to be able to make choices quickly and problem solve quickly and try to provide options. And I can take those skills now and really utilize them in theater when I work on a contemporary show, or, you know, we do need to sort of pull something from the warehouse in the morning and fit someone in the afternoon. And it's made me more brave, I think, about trying things and not planning so much, because I am a planner.
Well, at least I am. So.
I'm like, wait, we need a spreadsheet. And
yes,
you
spoke my language. So you've done film, you've done theater. Brooke asks, what is your favorite production you have ever been a part of?
I am going to say a production of Guys and Dolls that we did last summer at the Guthrie Theater, which was possibly the most number of costumes I think that I've ever done. But it was my favorite for a couple of reasons. Oh, here it is. Our mission was really to spark joy and to sort of have some whimsy and fun with a piece that, you know, can feel very classic and traditional. So this group of actors, they were so happy to be there. They really embraced the idea of being in Minneapolis for the summer. We had a wonderfully diverse group of people. I mean, this is an example of the 1940s where things transform. So you have the hot box girls who are in one thing and then transform into something else. There's a lot of pattern play. It was just, it was a lot of fun for all of those reasons.
Awesome. Yeah, it looks like a great show. I mean, it's, yeah, very poppy. I love it. Love it. Let's see here. What else do we have? Oh, I often read about Easter eggs and hidden meanings and details in costumes. What goes into coming up with creating and adding these details? And do you believe that many of them go unnoticed by most audience members? Or I guess the first question is that true? Are there
I've never heard of that, of the Easter eggs, but now I want to try it. I guess the only thing that comes to my mind is there are certainly things that we add as costume designers and artisans that we know no one will see, but they tickle us, like, you know, a lining that matches perfectly, or, you know, a polka dot dress with a zipper pull that has polka dots on it. I think there are certain things that have meanings that maybe most people may not know. Like if you are using African fabrics in a show. African wax resist prints have meanings. So we often see those fabrics on stage, and if you do the research, there's symbolism there. So that could possibly be an Easter egg. But thank you for that question, because I'll be hiding Easter eggs in all of my designs from now on.
Awesome. Well, it was an anonymous attendee, so unfortunately, we can't give any credit to them. Let's see here. What else do we got going on? So we do have a question from another anonymous attendee. What is the process to join a project? Do you have interviews each time, or is it different from the way you apply to other jobs?
Good question. Oh, well, usually for me, I get jobs off of recommendations. So sometimes that might be a director asks another director friend, hey, are there any costume designers who you enjoy collaborating with? And they might give a list. I don't know that there's really like a central hub for hiring costume designers. You know, I think people utilize social media just to reach out and say, hey, I'm doing this project. Can people recommend other people? I've worked at theaters where I've been asked to return and then had a phone call with a director that I've never met, and to see if we're compatible. So it doesn't, at least for me, it hasn't quite worked in the way that I thought it would, or maybe that, you know, when you get out of school, that your friends are getting jobs in a certain way. You know, they're making their resume, they're sending it out. So when my career started, it was really about taking jobs that weren't necessarily costume design jobs and starting out as a stitcher, or I did a lot of wardrobe, and then making connections. And like you said, it's all about, you know, it's not 6 degrees of separation in this industry, it's 1. So it's very likely if you're just in and around the theater in any capacity, you're an usher, you're working in the scene shop, you're interning, whatever the case may be, if you just like keep your ears open, you will hear about other opportunities. And ultimately it's, you know, it's showing that you're a respectful, open collaborator, and that can take you really far.
Awesome. Thank you. You mentioned about getting out of school. We've got Nicole is asking, how did you decide on Tisch for graduate school? What specific attributes were you looking for?
So I spent 1 year between my undergrad and my graduate at the professional apprenticeship program at the Juilliard School. And while I was there, it's Juilliard is in New York City. I, you know, got a taste for what it's like to live here. And that I think was one of the big reasons that I chose Tisch. I was definitely looking for a place that would allow me to kind of take my own path and discover who I am as a designer, because for me, I didn't really feel like I knew that when I left undergrad. And as I was assisting designers at the Juilliard School, I realized that they all had a very strong sense of self and point of view. And I didn't know what my point of view was. So when I interviewed at Tisch, it just felt like the right place for me. It felt like there was enough structure, but also enough of a flexibility to let you sort of follow the thread. So one example of that would be, I was costume design focused, but I was kind of interested in film. And at the time they didn't have a film program. So I took a storyboarding class, and storyboarding is essentially drawing frame by frame, sort of how you imagine the sequence or the action to unfold. So I think like knowing that there were some opportunities to sort of squeeze in some curiosity and play is, I think, the main reason that I ended up choosing Tisch.
Awesome. Well, Nicole, I hope that answered that question. Day asks, right now, because of COVID, do you have any projects that you are working on currently? How has COVID impacted your job?
Well, let's see which part to answer first. Okay. In the start of COVID, I think a lot of theaters they were moving forward. So I was, sort of actively designing some shows until they got postponed. And then I guess I kind of switched my way of thinking of how I would express my creativity, and did a lot of cooking, culinary creation, and a lot of projects. And then I kind of shifted my mentality from the beginning to say, I hope I'm going to answer this question, but
you had me at culinary, so
in order to be strong for my future self, I felt like I should take the time now to invest in wellness and, just in things that I don't ordinarily get to do because I'm always running around. So cooking is an example of that. I'm like, I'm the girl who's always trying to like cook in a kitchenette in Cincinnati. And now I could, create a meal or try something new for 2 hours. I started biking. You can see my little bike back here. Never got to do anything like that. And now I'm addicted. Which brings us to the next part of the question, which is if I'm working on anything now. So probably in the last 2 weeks has been the first time that people have started to reach out either about projects that did exist or upcoming projects. So it is a little crazy to be in the midst of working on something, like gathering all the materials. You're like moments away from first rehearsal, and then everything stops, and you're told that show is going to happen in a year and a half, and you're like, how am I going to remember anything about this design? I hope that I will, but I'll be teaching starting in, I guess, a week and a half. So that's something that I enjoy and am looking forward to. And I don't actually know if I can say what projects I'm working on yet, but I've got 2 projects on the horizon. So keep your fingers crossed, and then everything else is sort of pushed to 2021. And we're going to hope for the best.
Yes. Well, I'm sure I speak for everyone on the call when we say we are artists are in our thoughts for this year. I've got 2 questions here, one from Kyle and one from David. I think they're very similar, so I'm going to go ahead and ask them both, and hopefully we can answer them with one answer. Do you ever have situations where the actor or your coworkers have different ideas on how the piece should look? If so, how do you handle it? The other question was, I know ideally all designers are working together through the process, but have you ever been surprised by a change in the set or lighting elements impacting your design?
So yes, I have experienced differing opinions on what the costume should be. And I think that I've certainly gotten better over the years at being more flexible and certainly listening to everybody's point of view. I feel like my catchphrase has become "let's try it," because often you just learn from just trying it. And I've had experiences where we go in a complete circle. We start in one place. There's, you know, a new opinion that comes through, usually from the actor, of how they envision something. And we take that whole path, and sometimes we come back to where we started and everyone is happy. But like, if everyone isn't taking the journey with you, then you're not going to get there. And I've had other experiences where, you know, we start here, my idea's over here, their idea's over there, and we sort of like get to a new place, ping-ponging between the two. I've had actors take, I mean, this is not advised, but, oh, give me your watch. Oh, give me this, give me that. Yeah, this is what my character should wear. So it can be a little extreme at times. And I always try to just remember, like, I don't know what's going on in someone's life. I don't know what's going on in their head. I often don't even know what's happening in rehearsal, but it's a trying process and it's really rewarding, but we really just have to be patient with one another, because you just don't know what anyone's going through. So again, like, always just coming back to the mission, the, I guess, conceptual statement, ideas of the group is always going to be that roadmap. And then the second question about having something unexpected, scenic or lighting, it happens all the time. And sometimes I can laugh at it right now, but it's never funny in the moment. Often I feel like my collaborators and I have the same ideas when it comes to palette. I'll be like, oh, I'll be like, oh yeah, we're gonna do like mustard and rust. And then you get into the theater and you think you've really, like, you know, analyzed what color scenic is using, so you don't use them. And then that person sits on the bench and the bench is mustard and rust. And you're just like, why is this happening to me? And usually the bench is not the item that changes. Usually it's the costume that changes. But I don't think there's ever been anything that's been, you know, heartbreaking or extremely surprising. I think it's, you know, it's just as you prepare, lighting is something that we talk about so much. And for me, I'm always trying to figure out what the lighting might look like. With scenic, I can see a model, I can see sketches, I can have a closer idea, paint swatches of what something might be. Lighting is just so elusive. So sometimes I would say too, there can be a point where it's just easiest to talk with your collaborators. It's easiest to go over to the tech table and say, hello, lighting designer friend. Like, I'm stuck. I can't put any more makeup on this person. I don't know how to sort of bring them forward from the set. Like, we need to work together. Let's help each other. Help me to sort of bring this actor into focus, because I've sort of done what I can on my part. And no good collaborator is going to say no. You know, we're all striving for the same thing.
Awesome. let's see here. Moving to so we talked about how a lot of your jobs are, are referrals or recommendations from others. Another anonymous attendee has asked how you get jobs, primarily oh, it just moved. Sorry about that. They asked, do you have an agent or a website that you get hired from? I noticed that you are represented. Yes.
I am.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Could you speak to how does that work, and do you find it useful, and is it, yeah.
Sure. My agent, her name is Leah. She's a great match for me. I actually decided, I guess in 2017, after sort of dealing with negotiations on my own, that I don't have the personality for it. I am not great with, getting things that I need. I am nervous about confrontation, and not that all negotiations are about that at all, but I sort of wanted to start my relationships with theaters as the artist. Not talking about money, not talking about housing, not, dealing with flights or anything like that. I just felt like I needed sort of a simpler existence. And the other part is, I think an agent can really be a great sounding board. Someone who you can say, what do you think about this project? What do you think about this playwright or director? Or is this a good fit for me? How do you feel like this fits in with my season? Just sort of like a partner to help you, I think, work on projects that are really something that you're going to enjoy. So I went to a couple of agencies after reaching out through email to just sit down and have a casual conversation. Basically, like, you talk to the agent and tell them the type of work that you like, what you're looking to get out of the relationship, what your goals might be, where you see your career path going, things like that. And it's kind of like dating, I guess. So
Yeah, makes sense.
it's tricky, and people do move around, and I do have a website, and I think that's important to have. Really easy to just put in your email signature, pass along. So I would highly recommend that.
So we are kind of getting close to the end. We got about 5 minutes left. I did just put your email, your web address in the chat for everyone to check out Kara's work. I have a handful of questions here. I'm gonna try and get a few of them answered, but otherwise I'll send them out to Kara directly, and hopefully we can get a reply, and I can send them to everyone who attended. But as a person of color in the costume field, what advice would you give to other persons of color who desire to follow you in your footsteps?
Oh, wow. I guess my advice would be is to advocate for yourself. And I'm still working on that. And, I look towards my mentor as someone who I think is sort of paving the way for me. Sometimes when things don't go well, which, it happens, there's miscommunications and things like that. It can be hard to wonder, why is this happening? And is it because I'm Black? Is it because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm so young looking? And I think it can be really easy to drive yourself a little crazy thinking about those things. And so something that has really pushed me further is to say, okay, well, if I'm going to be invited to this theater and I'm invited to do the show about Black people in the small space, I am going to show everyone that I'm an amazing designer. And next year I'm going to be doing any show I want here. And that's what your belief should be, that I encourage you to be strong in your conviction about that you deserve to be at the table.
Thank you, Kara, and thank you for that question. We got about 2 minutes left. I'm going to ask the last question for the night. Given what the theater industry will look like post-COVID, do you think it would be beneficial for a career in costume design to pursue graduate school now, or to wait until the industry can come back?
I'm going to guess that question is starting graduate school now is meaning in 2021.
Yeah, I think so. Yes. Or at least in the next year or so. Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you feel ready for it, you should go for it. I think we always have to look at, like, could there be anything good that comes out of this? And to me, I think we have to sort of break whatever traditional ideas we have of what theater is. And this is the moment to do that. So, you know, I don't know where virtual theater is going to take us. I don't know where physical theater is going to take us. But I do think there will be things to partake in and enjoy. And I think if you can get into the classroom, whether it's virtually or physically for graduate school, I don't think that COVID should affect your decision of whether you should go for it or wait, because theater's been around forever. It will rise again.
Yes, yes. Well, Kara, thank you so much. Trinity, Gabrielle, and the 2 anonymous questions, I will copy those and send them off and hopefully hear back. But sorry we couldn't get to everyone today. I didn't even get to all of my questions, so oh well. But we are at time. And Kara, thank you so much for joining us and to speak to us and answer all these questions. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you all.
Clip. Thank you so much, and have a great night.